And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time, and times and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Hello and welcome everybody to a new video from Jörg Joggler 66, Hour of the Truth. Today on half sunny Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock my time, because we changed the clock last time, 9 o'clock with the Minnesota, where Brother Bret is joining me today for the 5th reading of the book The Great Exodus by James Edgar Wylie, which we are going to continue, and it's going to be a wonderful read, even though we had a little bit contention in the beginning and didn't understand what the book was all about, and different time frames and time settings and time teachings in this book and all that stuff that you know that we did in the first 2 videos. And then we came unprepared to the table and started reading the book, and it started out nice and then it became complicated, and now it's getting nice again. So it's up and down, it's a roller coaster. But that's what it is when you read a book from the 19th century without any preparation in the 21st century. But the Holy Spirit will lead us, and I hope that he will help me go through this broadcast, because as you probably hear, I have caught a cold last night. I really have the sniffs for the moment, and I hope that I will make it through this 1 hour, and because I'm very much looking forward to it. But in the meantime, let me just announce Brother Bret Norman, who is accompanying me today in the reading of this book of James Edgar Wylie. Hello, Brother Bret, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, Jörg. Thank you for having the time to do another reading, and I'm kind of feeling under the weather a little bit here, too. I have been for the past couple weeks, actually. But yeah, we've been getting a lot of rain here, but anyway, doesn't matter. I talk about the weather a lot, but that's what you do when you live in Minnesota. For whatever reason, you know, it's always changing around here.
I don't live in Minnesota, where we speak of the weather here in Belgium and also in Germany, where I come from, also a lot. So,
yeah, I bet.
It seems that there's nothing else important. The people don't speak about religion; they don't speak about Jesus Christ. So let's talk about the weather. Let's
yeah,
take
that's true. Very good point.
Let's take something unimportant and of no meaning and fill our days with those with that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyway, for today we have prepared another reading of the book The Great Exodus by James Atkin Wylie. We have to start in chapter 5 or page 56 of the PDF that you prepared. And we're going to read right this. It's about the figuration of the world's day and the church's night. That's very, very interesting. I had the time to prepare a little bit. I read the first 3 or 4 pages in preparation earlier today. So let's see where this leads us. And I can tell you this is the style of the book that I like to read. This is in the Henry Gretton Guinness and the James Atkin Wylie style that I know of. And it's complicated here and there, but it's understandable, and that's the wonderful thing about it. Figuration of the world's day and the church's night. Yeah, the world that is Lucifer's reign, and the church's night is because the night is dark for the church, because the church is left without any guidance, and so much abomination has crept into the church that it is just dark over there. And that, of course, was for the Middle Ages, when the Word of God was not in the world. But this still is today, where the Word of God is in the world, but it's rejected by the world. So we still have the figuration of the world's day and the church's night. What does the author say about this? Well, he says, the present inquiry is not regarding the end of time, it is regarding the time of the end. That's a very significant difference between the end of time and the time of the end. There is fixed by God a great final day. When that day arrives, time shall number and finish its cycles. The trump of God shall sound. The dead shall rise. The great white throne shall be erected in the sky. And the terrestrial career of our race shall terminate amid the terrors of a dissolving universe and the solemnities of a grand assize. That great day knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but the Father only. Sorry, I forgot to switch my Skype to not disrupt, so I will have no texts from anyone coming in here. Sorry, continue now. That great day knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but the Father only. But the one great cycle of human duration or of history is made up of a number of lesser cycles. The present inquiry is regarding the end of one of these cycles. The moment we open the volume of prophecy, there meets our eye a notable and outstanding epoch. The merest tyro in the study of prophecy cannot possibly miss it. Do you understand the word tyro, Bret?
I'd have to look it up.
No, you don't. I looked it up because I thought that's a strange word. It's kind of a novice.
Yeah.
A new student. That's what
got
it
it.
means.
All right.
That's why I looked it up. I thought that's a strange word, and I thought you maybe are not familiar with it. That's why I'm asking.
That's right. You got it.
So the merest tyro, the merest novice in the study of prophecy cannot possibly miss it. So you don't have to have a full understanding of the gospel and of the Bible to even understand this part of the volume of prophecy that the author speaks about here. It stands on the prophetic page with a margin of deepest blackness all round it. This epoch has a character all its own. It is diverse from every epoch going before it. It is diverse from every epoch coming after it. During this period, society was to be inverted. The world, so to speak, was to be turned upside down. The principles of despotism and idolatry, which in a better ordered state of things would have gravitated to the bottom, were to rise to the summit and gain the ascendancy in human affairs, while the principles of truth and righteousness, overborne by the powers of evil, were to become subordinate and lose their influence in the government of the world. A bright day of truth and liberty was to rise upon the earth, but its dawn could not come till this long and gloomy epoch had run out. During this hour of the power of darkness, Jehovah was in appearance to abdicate the government of the world. The scepter was to be grasped by Satan. The earth was to become a province of the great empire of darkness. To Lucifer, the ruler of this empire, was every knee to be bowed, and at his footstool all the treasures of the world were to be laid. Isn't this why Lucifer, or Satan, when he tempted Jesus 3 times in Matthew chapter 4, say, when you bow down and worship me, I will give you all the treasures and all the glory of the world? This is kind of the same words the author uses here to make us very well understanding that already that was the time of the reign of the devil in this earth. And when did that epoch exactly begin? Well, that's what we're going to come to a little bit later on. I think this is a very profound and interesting sentence that James Atkin Wylie writes us here, where he says, to Lucifer, the ruler of this empire, was every knee to be bowed, and at his footstool all the treasures of the world were to be laid. Crowns and armies, philosophy and art, poetry with her charms, wealth with her splendors, and pleasure with her seductions, all were given into Satan's hands, that with them he might extend his kingdom and reward his servants. I'm just sorry, my nose is running away.
Yeah, right. It's true today too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very.
Not so much changed, all right, up to today, did it?
Well, it seems that we're in a second cycle of this now, yeah. But it's a much faster cycle this time, it seems.
I think, therefore, it is important, Brett, that we understand that we are not at the end of times, but in the times of the end.
Yes,
as
right.
Papa said in the beginning.
Times of the end. That's.
I think that's what we are feeling.
Yeah, so, that's true. That's very true.
Not even to take a little bit on beforehand of the things that we were speaking of, let me just say, maybe we are still in this dark epoch. And this epoch will only become bright when Jesus Christ comes back.
That's right.
And as long as he is not back, we are still in one of these prophecies, whether it's the 2,520-day prophecy or 2,300 or whatever. Now we are still in that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because
yeah.
We have a lot of darkness in the world today, and especially spiritual darkness, you know?
Yeah, especially when you're talking about the governments of the world.
Yeah, and when you look at all the people who call themselves Christians but have no idea what it is to take up the cross and follow Jesus in the very first place.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
You know, all these spare-time Christians, all these false Christians, all these people who think that they become Christians just by here and there spending a few hours on Sunday in some kind of church. All those people think that they are doing God a service, but actually they are serving Satan, and they actually prolong the time of darkness here in this world. Yeah. And I think that is something that we have to understand, and I guess the author will help us with this book, that we will get a completely new view of this world. We are still in these dark ages for a big time.
Yeah, you know? I agree. It's a reemergence of something. I think you mentioned something very profound on one of our last conversations about a spiritual darkness, a spiritual, would you say, what was the word that we were using? James Atkin Wylie was using, actually. I can't think of it right now. This bondage, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The captivity.
Captivity. That's right. Martin Luther used that too.
Babylonian captivity of the church, as Martin Luther expressed himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's keep going. This is good.
Yeah, I think so too. I like it so far.
Me too.
So All were to be given into Satan's hand, that with them he might extend his kingdom and reward his servants. A long and glorious career was opening to the world power, but in proportion as the day brightened around it, the night of affliction and captivity was to deepen and darken around the church. The drama now opening before us, its periods, the character of the political and ecclesiastical confederacies that were to dominate during it, and the awful judgments attending their fall, it will be our business to examine at large in the following portions of our work. Meanwhile, and as preparatory to the fuller investigation of the subject, let us take a glance at the manner in which this epoch of highest glory to the world and to deepest humiliation of the church, is figured in prophecy. Let me just change the picture here. This dark dispensation did not overtake the church without warning. The church has always been warned by God. Now, it gets real interesting. It is remarkable that at the very moment of the entering of this servitude, and on the very scene where its opening years were to be passed, the curtain should have been lifted, and the view given to the church and the world of the future that was before both. Night has fallen on the world's capital, and silence and slumber reign in the palace of the king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and in that dream a majestic image stands before him. Yeah, this one. A majestic image stands before him. And now we read from Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 through 33, from the King James Bible. Quote, "Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, and his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part of iron and part of clay." Unquote. This image was the symbol of the epoch of which we speak, and we are here taught that this epoch should last during the entire currency of the four great empires whose rise is here foretold. First in the image comes the head of fine gold. There is the Babylonian Empire. Next come the breast and the arms of silver. There is the Medo-Persian Empire. Then follow the belly and the thighs of brass. There is the Macedonian or Grecian Empire. And lastly come his legs of iron and his feet part of iron and part of clay. There is the Roman Empire, to which its predecessors make full transference of all their power and glory, and whose latter end is to fall before the stone cut out of the mountain without hands. So far, at present, the image which rose upon the monarch's sight in this dream. There stood the world's one master. There stood the church's great oppressor. At the feet of the power here symbolized were all the successive generations of the world to bow down till the appointed term of its dominion had run out. During that period it was to be well with its friends, but ill with its enemies. To it were to belong the wealth, the pleasure, the glory of the world, and it could bestow or withhold them as it pleased. It had stars of rank and robes of purple for those who should stoop down and do obeisance to it. But dungeons, chains, and death wherewith to chastise the man who should dare oppose its will or obey any law save its own. So was it to act during the days of its dominancy. Whom it would slay, and whom it would keep alive. It was not one figuration only, but two, which was given in prophecy of this gloomy epoch. The first, as we have just seen, was given to the heathen monarch. The second was given to a holy prophet. And for that the dream was doubled. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Yeah. Therefore, we have to look at another picture. I have to look this up again. Sorry, I didn't prepare all the pictures. I didn't have the time. So we are going to see another picture here that deals with the four beasts. Just let me see where this comes up here. This is the one. In the night visions there passed before Daniel, as we read in the 7th chapter of his prophecy, 4 wild beasts. These 4 beasts were the symbols of the same 4 empires which were in succession to pass across the stage of the world and be succeeded by a kingdom that should never pass away. The first beast was like a lion, the Babylonian kingdom. The second beast was like to a bear, the Medo-Persian kingdom. The third beast was like a leopard, the Greek kingdom. The fourth beast was dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. The terrible Roman kingdom we speak about. So far the figuration. The image composed of 4 metals that stood before the king and the 4 beasts that passed before Daniel are representative of the same epoch, and that the epoch of Satan's dominion on earth through the instrumentality of despotic kingdoms and idolatrous churches. Sorry, I have to clean my nose for a second. It's running over my face here.
Right.
I'm sorry for that.
No problem.
Now, having seen how this epoch is figured in prophecy, let us next mark how its close is described. Daniel, in the 7th chapter of his prophecy and 9th verse, thus describes the close of this period. Quote, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words, I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Unquote. Now John, in the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, speaking of the same epoch, thus says, quote, And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Unquote. These prophets are not speaking of the end of time, and the winding up of that great cycle which embraces all the epochs of human history. They are speaking, as we shall afterwards show, of the end of the 4 empires. And they depict the solemnities of that era by figures borrowed from the great day of final judgment. As time itself shall end in a great judgment day, so this epoch is represented as ending in a judgment day. When the great cycle of the world's entire duration shall have run out, God's trump shall sound. The dead of all past generations shall rise. The Creator in person shall descend and take his seat as judge upon the great white throne. All who have ever lived with all their actions shall come up for acquittal or condemnation, and the mansions of eternal life or the abodes of outer and everlasting darkness shall receive the 2 companies into which the sentence of the judge will divide the countless assembly which the trumpet's peal will sist before his tribunal. On the exemplar of the greater cycle is formed the less. When the epoch represented by the image shall close, God's trump will sound. The earthquake of revolution will shake the world, the graves will open. All who have lived during the epoch then closing will rise. Their character and their actions will pass in review before the great white throne and receive from the righteous judge that sentence of approval which will open to those on whom it is pronounced the gates of the new paradise, or that sentence of condemnation and rejection which will open to those on whom it shall fall the doors of the abyss, the lake burning with fire and brimstone. Now, we must bear in mind that the first of these judgment days, that which will close the cycle of all time, is literal. The second judgment day, that which will close this one epoch of time, is symbolical. We are shut up to this conclusion by the admitted fact that the prophecies in which this day of wrath is foretold are symbolical and not literal. On the typological principle we have already expounded. The first judgment day is the forerunner of the great and final one. The first will bear the likeness of the second. But, though symbolical, it will be a real judgment. The tribunal, though unseen, will be real. The judge, though unseen, will be real. The sentence, though pronounced by no audible voice and executed by no visible ministers, will be a real sentence, followed by a real execution. From the presence of that veiled throne there will issue forth unseen but irresistible forces which will lay hold upon the guilty and overwhelm them in ruin. This is the hour to which all prophecy points. This is the coming sung of by the Old Testament Church, while yet very far off, and sung of too by the New Testament Church, often with but a partial knowledge of the coming which her songs welcomed. Our God shall come, and he shall not keep silence, as we can read in Psalms 1, verses 1 through 6. Silent he had been during the long papal night, but the period of silence is over now, and suddenly, heralded by the tempestuous fires of judgment, there rises upon the unexpected nations a great moral tribunal. Our God shall come, and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him, and be very tempestuous round about him. He shall call to the heavens from above, and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. That is, those who have during the papal apostasy continued faithful on the ground of the one great sacrifice. Not the daily returning sacrifice of the Eucharist and the Roman Catholic Mass, but the one eternal sacrifice the Son of God made 2,000 years ago. That is those who have during the papal apostasy continued faithful on the ground of the one, Jesus' great sacrifice, and who, as the consequence, shall now enjoy protection, as the Israelites did under the blood of their paschal sacrifice. It follows, and the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for the Lord is judge himself. That this grand exhibition of judicial righteousness is placed in gospel times, and will constitute the immediate precursor of the millennium, is evident from the beginning of the psalm, which makes this epoch of judgment contemporaneous with the blessed day, when God shall shine out of Zion the perfection of beauty, and when the mighty God shall call the earth to the knowledge of his name, from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. We shall select one more prediction out of a multitude in the Psalms of this great coming and the moral tempests that will precede it. Let me just change the picture here. I'm about to sneeze very hard, I guess. I'm sorry. I hope I'm audible. Yeah,
You know,
is that
it's
okay, Brett?
interesting, Yerk. I think that, I don't know why the author says Psalm 1 here
Verses 1 through
earlier,
6.
1 through 6 on page
Yeah.
60 of the book, not the PDF. I think it's 63 of the PDF. I looked it up, and it's actually Psalm 50, verse 3. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him, and he shall be very tempestuous. I can't even pronounce this word. Sorry. I don't know these words. Tempestuous around about him. He shall call to the heavens from above. Yeah, so this just continues in chapter 50. So, I don't know why, there's some references that just aren't, maybe that's L. Is that an L? Because L is 50.
No, it doesn't make sense to use a Roman number. It's 1 point.
No, he's been using numbers all along for Roman numbers, for the chapters. So that could be an L.
Is it 50? Is it 50 then, or what?
Yeah, it is. It's 50. But it's funny he uses a lowercase L here, not an uppercase L. You would think he would be a capital L. But anyway, it's just something I noticed. I thought I'd chime in.
And the heaven shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself. Selah. Yeah, well, that's what he speaks about. Yeah, it must be an L, but it looked to me like a 1. Yeah, but
I know, but I've memorized chapter 1. I know that by heart, and I know that wasn't right.
There's a difference between this L and this 1 here, right? But this is so. I mean, it's not easy to see because you only have the 2 stripes here on down.
I know.
That make the difference. And okay, then it's Psalm 50 verses 1 through 6. Good that you point that out while we're here. Anyway, let's read it then.
Sure. Let's read it.
Psalm of Asaph. The mighty God, even the Lord, hath spoken and called the earth from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. Out of Zion the perfection of beauty God hath shined. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous around about him. And he shall call the heavens from above, and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by a sacrifice. And the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself. Yeah, that's clearly Psalm 50. That's true. Okay. Now, continue on the next page here. Let me just switch back to the picture, okay? We shall select one more prediction out of a multitude in the Psalms of this great coming and the moral tempests that will precede it. In that noble triumphal ode, the 97th Psalm, the earth in the opening stanza is called on to rejoice, and the multitude of its isles to be glad. The earth bid rejoice, and its isles called to be glad. How strange! Is it possible that the same earth, which for ages had been peopled with only nations and chains, and from those continents and islands there had risen from century to century the groan of oppression and the wail of woe, should yet throughout all the kindreds and realms re-echo the voice of gladness? Is it possible, we ask, that this shall be? It stands here most surely foretold. Not foretold now for the first time, when tyrant thrones begin to totter and insurgent nations are rending their chains, but foretold for 4,000 years ago, and sung of by the Hebrew bard, who, looking across the ages dark with slavery and crimes, decried the world's jubilee, yet a very far off, and shouted forth the first free, bold welcome to liberty. Well, the earth and its islands are bidden rejoice. But while we are straining the ear to catch the first notes of the song, a terrific vision rises upon our sight. A throne is seen to be set in heaven. Around it are rolled clouds of sevenfold blackness. A devouring fire goes before that throne, scattering and utterly consuming its enemies. While through the darkness that envelops it, the lightning's blaze is seen, and the thunder's voice is heard. The earth trembles, and the hills are melted like wax. It is not till this awful tempest has spent its fury, and its thunders have rolled past, that the song for which we had waited is heard. We are now told of a victory which the Lord hath won. We are told that they that serve graven images have been confounded, that God's righteousness hath been openly showed in the sight of the heathen, and that all the ends of the earth have seen his salvation. And now, the judgment at an end, the song begins. It rises in low silvery strains of quiet gladness, but soon it grows into a magnificent and universal anthem, in which all creatures and all nature take part. First, Zion is glad. The elder churches begin to praise. Next, the daughters, the younger churches, rejoice. Then rapidly rises the song, every moment gathering strength and volume. The harp adds its melody, the cornet its soft strains, the trumpet breaks in with its clanging notes. The sea roars, the floods clap their hands, the hills shout from shore to shore, resounds a mighty peal, and, as in it rolls onward over earth and the sea, it bears with it the exultant joy of all the earth's ransomed nations, and finally swells upward in a thunder peal of praise to heaven. But let us mark that this is the very same drama, the same in its gloomy passage through long ages of bondage, the same in its ending and a fierce conflict, a glorious victory and a ransomed and triumphing world, which is pictured forth by these early psalmists, as by the later prophets Daniel and John. The same symbols, moreover, are employed in the Psalms as in the Apocalypse, to exhibit the close of this eventful epoch. In both it is symbolized as a judgment day, teaching us that the whole race of Adam must pass through a judgment day before entering upon their eternal state. So the nations of the world must pass through a judgment day before entering upon their millennial rest. Yet again, let us turn to the 18th Psalm. He should write it always like this, then it's no confusion. Right?
That's right.
What an unparalleled scene of grandeur and terror is presented to us. There is nowhere, even in the Bible, a finer description of the power and majesty of Jehovah than in this 18th Psalm. And as regards the greatest of uninspired authors, the highest flights of Homer and the boldest conceptions of Dante are in comparison wanting in beauty and force, are frivolous and groveling. Besides the massy majesty, the soaring sublimity of the psalmist, the undazzled, daring gaze, we should call it, were it not inspired, which he casts upon the very face of God. But what scene is it which David describes with such a lavish munificence of imagery? We are told that David spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. But there is nothing in David's personal history that could justify a song like this. He personates the church. In David, the church here sings by anticipation the terrors of that day when God, remembering her condition, encompassed by the sorrows of death and the floods of the ungodly, the 1260 days of her sackcloth state, and hearing her cry, the cry from under the altar, shall bow the heavens and come down at the time of the end, shall shake the earth with revolution, remove the hills, that is, overthrow governments, lay bare the world's foundations in the exposure of the falsehoods on which society has been based, discover the channels of the waters by convulsing the nations, and, having smitten them with the arrows of his judgment, and having rained upon them the hailstones of war and invasion, he will scatter the thrones and hierarchies which have oppressed his people, and utterly uproot the whole political and ecclesiastical power which has upheld idolatry. And thus he will achieve the final deliverance of his church. This is the drama that passes before us in this psalm, and with unequaled terror and grandeur. It is the very drama which afterwards passes before us in the Apocalypse. It is not Daniel only who has joined together the time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, at the time when thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. All the prophets have done so. It is impossible to read their prophecies without being satisfied that they all point to some great and terrible crisis of the world, which even they, prophets though they were, trembled to contemplate, and which they could find no words strong enough and no imagery dark enough to shadow forth. There runs through the pages of Isaiah, for instance, a mingled stream of light and fire. The richest promises and the most fearful denunciations are not unfrequently woven together, and it is ever by the side of the brightest vision of the millennial church that we find the darkest image of coming judgment. Quote, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem, says the prophet, addressing the church for the last time. But even now, at the very close, his prophecy retains that mingled character of blessing and judgment which had marked it throughout. For behold, he immediately adds, the Lord will come with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebukes with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. Isaiah chapter 66, verses 12 through 16. Yeah, I'm sure that was an L, Bret.
Yep.
We can see this now clearly here.
We sure can.
Yeah.
It looks so much like a 1, though.
Yeah,
I gotta
absolutely.
say, it really does.
When you compare this L here with the 1 of the 12, it's on first glance.
Yep.
Just the same. Oh, just my nose is running away. I
Sure,
have to keep
please
it here.
go ahead.
That's
Good timing.
It's disgusting. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. I got the same problem, brother.
Not easy to do a reading when you're sniffing like this.
Yeah, I think you're in a much more sensitive state there in that condition than I am right now. But yeah.
Possible. Okay, let's continue. In the vision of the warrior returning from Edom, the land of the idolatrous power, red in his apparel, and his garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat, which is just the same great drama foreshortened. The prophet joins in one the day of vengeance and the year of my redeemed. That we can read in Isaiah chapter 63, verses 1 through 6. It is the same with all the prophets. It matters not whether it is Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Joel or Amos that speaks. It is the same great final and universal retribution, the same assembling of all nations for judgment, which is the burden of all of them. Their prophecies have a fullness about them, a comprehensiveness of scope, which no mere partial infliction can exhaust. And they move in a curve, if we may be allowed the figure, so parabolic as to carry them far beyond the times of these prophets and over the head of the kingdoms that then existed, onward to our day, and to the great empires and the fully developed and firmly consolidated idolatries which, since the corruption of Christianity, have burned both the East and the West. Their denunciations take aim, so to speak, at these systems. There is one idolatry in particular which is compounded of all the paganisms of the ancient world, and which has grafted itself upon the political constitutions of Europe, to which these denunciations have special reference. They all gather in a circle of fire around Rome. She is the successor of the early idolatries. They have given her their seat. They have given her their principles of dominion. They have given her their evil passions. And, along with the bequests, she inherits also their predicted doom. It is this day, even the day of her fall, which will synchronize most probably with that of the fall of all contemporary idolatries, of which Hosea speaks when he says, "Great shall be the day of Jezreel," and of which Joel speaks when he foretells, "The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake," and of which Amos too has mentioned when he says, "Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it?" Unquote. Thus do the prophets foretell a day of blessed repose to the church in time to come. But they have suspended between us and the days, curtain-like, a cloud of tempest and fire. And whether we attempt to contemplate that day through the medium of the present state of society or through prophecy, we can see it not otherwise than darkly and through a cloud. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was coming for a long time.
Right.
Okay. So before the final and literal judgment shall come the literal resurrection. So before the symbolic judgment day shall come a symbolic resurrection. Before the throne on which sat the Ancient of Days, so 10,000 times 10,000, Daniel tells us the judgment was set and the books were opened in chapter 7, verse 10. And speaking of the time of the end, in another chapter, Daniel says, "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt," in Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Referring to the same era, John says, quote, "I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark on their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years." Revelation 20, verse 4. What do these passages now mean? Do they mean a literal rising, or do they mean a moral rising? Do they mean a rising of the very bodies of the saints? A resuscitation, is that correct? Resuscitation of their literal bones? Meaning resurrection, probably?
Resuscitation, I think it is.
Resuscitation.
Yeah.
Okay. A resuscitation of their literal bones? Or do they mean simply a resurrection of their cause? We have no hesitation in saying they mean the latter. They predict a resurrection of principles, not of bodies. Let us take an analogous on this.
Analogous.
Yes, I know. I read it. I can't pronounce it.
That's right. I do the same thing.
Let us take an analogous prophecy.
Yeah, that's it.
And mark how it was fulfilled, not literally, yet nevertheless really. It was foretold that before Christ should appear, Elijah should come again. Did that very Elijah, whom the chariot of fire and horses of fire had carried upward into heaven, return again? The man did not, but the power and spirit of that man did. Elijah lived over again in John the Baptist, that is. Of such sort is the resurrection here foretold. It is a symbol, like all the rest of this symbolic prophecy, but a symbol full of significance and beauty. The martyrs shall rise at this great day, not in their bones and dust, but in their spirit and power. By that immutable law of providence which makes past defeats future victories, and the death of the martyr's body, the resurrection of his spirit, the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus shall rise all over Europe. Huss and Jerome shall come from their stake. Hamilton and Wishart, Cranmer and Ridley shall revive from their ashes. Luther, Calvin and Knox shall stand up from their graves. The martyrs shall rise from the plains of France, from the snows of the Alps, from the lagoons of Venice, from the fens of Holland, from the moors of Scotland. They will rise in their memories, that these may be vindicated, and that the cruel sentences which assigned them to the fire may be reversed. They will rise in their principles, that these may be justified as righteous and holy. They will rise in their cause, that it may be acquitted from the condemnation passed on by man. And in the triumph of the systems and churches founded on the principles for which they died, they will enjoy a lasting and glorious reign with Christ their head. On that day, God will roll away the cloud of obloquy that rested above their graves. Their stakes will be converted into thrones. Their names will emerge from the black cloud in which they sat, and through all the ages of the future, they will be honored as the world's greatest benefactors, who handed down the truth by their sufferings and blood. And so, quote, that they be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Unquote. We little think what a vast revolution awaits public opinion. Many a star worship for ages will one day be found to be a star of darkness. Many a name which the world had canonized, and before which the knee had long been bent, shall yet be cast out as evil and left to rot. And many a principle, falsely deemed divine, to which the mind has bowed for ages, will be trodden under foot as pernicious by its votaries, as the poor barbarian breaks in pieces and tramples into the mire of the streets the Gorgons and the Hydras he had worshipped in his day of darkness. When that great coming ordeal has passed over the world, what a change! How many vacant niches in the temple of fame! How many altars without their divinities! How many heroes without their laurel! How many poets and orators without their crown! The world said, "Ye are gods, but ye shall die as men." But the firmament of the public opinion will not be without its lights, though many of its present luminaries shall set. How utterly unknown to the present race of Frenchmen are their martyrs! Yet these martyrs were the glory of France. They would have saved their country from the terrible series of revolutions and wars which has since passed over. In this hope they shed their blood. Noble patriots were they, elegant scholars, proficients in every useful art. And to all their other adornments they added this, the highest of all, that they would have given liberty to France by giving her the gospel. And yet how profoundly ignorant is France of these men, of their great qualities and their noble deeds. The same may be said regarding Spain, the same may be said regarding Italy, regarding Belgium, in fine, of every papal country. But the day will come when honest history shall search them out, and bring them forth from their unknown or undishonored graves. The pictured historic scenes of 3 centuries ago are not obliterated. Superstition has drawn its brush across the canvas, and infidelity has repainted it with modern apostles and philosophers, with Voltaire and Proudhon. But the superincumbent layer will yet be removed, and the great worthies of the past will come again into the light, gigantic of stature and noble of mien. What is that word? I don't know that word. Noble of mien?
I don't know it either. Mine? I'm not sure.
Okay, let's have a look what that means. M-E-A-N. Mean. Yeah, I don't know. There's even not a translation from English.
Wow. It's a town maybe or something? Province or something?
No, I don't think so. And the great worthies in the past, and the light, gigantic structure, and noble of mien as ever. I don't know what it is. It is not even an English word. It says here, translate from the Vietnamese, you know.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, you can look it up.
Yeah, here it is. Mean. Look, air, manner, external appearance. It says Pope, too.
Uh-huh.
Strange.
But the superincumbent layer will yet be removed, and the great worthies of the past will come again into the light, gigantic of stature and noble of... What did you say it means? Noble of?
Look, air, manner, external appearance.
External appearance.
Yeah.
Okay. Neither undimmed in their splendor, nor enfeebled in their power by the obscurity in which they have so long dwelt. Their example and principles will rule the future. They shall sit on thrones. They shall shine as stars, stars which will never lose their brightness, nor ever fall from their place. But the drama of judgment proceeds. Before the great white throne, 2 companies are seen to stand. The principles of idolatry and despotism shall that day come up for judgment, as well as those of truth and liberty. Equity demands it, and the infallible working of God's providence will bring it to pass. These principles have been upon their trial for ages, and the issue of that trial will on that day be proclaimed from his tribunal in the hearing of the world. They will be found not to abide the fire. The corruption and falsehood of these principles will on that day be conclusively demonstrated. The craft and tyranny by which they have upheld themselves will be thoroughly exposed. Their destructive tendency will be traced in the utter disorganization and ruin which will then overwhelm all the political and religious confederacies which have been founded upon them. And this will be accomplished by acts so public and so manifestly judicial that all will see it to be the judgment of God, not less than if this throne were planted in visible glory in the heavens, and the sentence of doom came uttered by his own omnipotent voice. Now, we read quite a lot, and now let's see how far this chapter is still going.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one, yeah. But it's only these 4. It's only these few pages, so we better read through it.
Okay,
it's only 4 pages.
Very profound paragraph we just read there, Jörg.
Yeah, maybe shall I read it again?
It's up to you. That'd be great. Sure, why not?
But the drama of judgment proceeds, right?
Yep.
There. Okay. But the drama of judgment proceeds. Before the great white throne, 2 companies are seen to stand. The principles of idolatry and despotism shall that day come up for judgment, as well as those of truth and liberty. Equity demands it, and the infallible working of God's providence will bring it to pass. These principles have been upon that trial for ages, and the issue of that trial will on that day be proclaimed from this tribunal in the hearing of the world. They will be found not to abide the fire. The corruption and falsehood of these principles will on that day be conclusively demonstrated. The craft and tyranny by which they have upheld themselves will be thoroughly exposed. Their destructive tendency will be traced in the utter disorganization and ruin which will then overwhelm all the political and religious confederacies which have been founded upon them. And this will be accomplished by acts so public and so manifestly judicial that all will see it to be the judgment of God, not less than if his throne were planted in visible glory in the heavens, and the sentence of doom came uttered by his own omnipotent voice. Yeah, that is a very important paragraph.
Yeah,
right,
Lord, bring it on. Yeah, let's see it.
This is the resurrection that awaits at that epoch the unrighteous dead. Equal justice shall in this respect be dealt with the persecutor and the martyr. As the dust of the one shall sleep in the cave where he died, the moor on which he fell, and the ocean into which his ashes were thrown, till the Saviour's voice shall call it up at that final day, so the body of the other shall continue to slumber in the trophied tomb, in the emblazoned and heraldic vault, to which he was consigned amid the state's pomps and the church's benedictions, till that hour when the archangel's drum shall rend heaven and earth. But although his dust shall not rise, his memory shall rise, his crimes shall rise. The governments and the churches, which he upheld by his policy and oppression, will become his representatives. When they shall stand before the great bar, he virtually will stand before it. When they are judged, he is judged. When they are overthrown, he is overthrown. Thus, many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake to shame and everlasting contempt. And thus, when the books were opened, the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. Now, two other symbols does the Apocalypse employ to depict this epoch. These symbols give us a clear insight into the causes out of which this epoch springs, the retribution with which it is stamped, and the issues, solemn and lasting, that will flow from it. It is symbolized as a harvest and a vintage. We have simply to yield ourselves to the analogy of the symbol, and we are led to its meaning. The harvest comes not alone. It is no more an isolated, unconnected phenomenon in the moral than it is in the natural world. Now, what does this do to the teaching of a secret rapture, Bret?
Yeah. It is no more an isolated, unconnected phenomenon in the moral than it is in the natural world.
The harvest comes and everybody will see it, right? There will be no secrets about that.
No.
Now, in the first as in the last, it most surely implies a time of sowing and a time of springing and a time of ripening, all going before it. Well, here comes the harvest of the nations. The sowing is past and all the intermediate stages are past, and now has come the time of reaping. And as the nations sowed 5 centuries or 10 centuries or 20 centuries before, so shall they now reap. Those which sowed the seed of divine truth shall reap the harvest of liberty and tranquility. Those which sowed the seed of despotism in the state and idolatry in the church will on that day reap the harvest of revolution and atheism. This era is farther symbolized as the vintage. The figurative uses of the vine in Scripture gives an ecclesiastical aspect to this symbol, but its lesson is easily read. It is, in brief, that those nations which have planted the true vine shall at that day gather good grapes, while they who have planted the false vine shall then eat the grapes of Sodom and the clusters of Gomorrah. To complete the symbol and carry out the ideal drama consistently to its close, we are shown the final award and destinies of the two companies. Both Daniel and John represent this symbolic judgment closing as the real judgment will close with a heaven and a hell. On the right or the great white throne, on the right of the great white throne is seen a paradise, a new heavens and a new earth, into which the nations of them that are saved are seen to enter in a grand triumphal procession. On the left of the throne is a pandemonium, into whose fiery lake are cast the nations of the rejected. What does this import? It imports the immorality that will be given to the principles of truth and the extinction to which are doomed the principles of falsehood. The nations and churches which have framed their constitution and based their policy on divine revelation shall pass safely through the great ordeal and, carrying with them their principalities of perpetuity, will enter on a career of glorious dominion amid the blessings of religion and the fruits of liberty, undisturbed by revolution from within or invasion from without. For then they shall learn war no more. On the contrary, those nations and churches will have constituted themselves on error will perish in this ordeal, and, passing away from the earth, will leave their name and memorial as a warning to the ages that are to come after. Such are the solemnities that are to close the epoch of Antichrist's reign and of the church's captivity. Casting our eye forward, there is seen at the end of the dispensation a great white throne and a vast assembly, wakened, as it were, from their graves by the earthquake shock of revolution and summoned by the trumpet's voice of providence into the presence of the great judge. Those churches which have served Antichrist shall be cast in the judgment and assigned to eternal oblivion. Those that have remained faithful to Christ shall be approved, their innocence proclaimed, and their fidelity rewarded, and they shall flourish and reign upon the earth. Thus shall the mystery of providence be finished by a glorious display of the perfect equity and righteousness of the great judge. So, 22 pages. This finishes this chapter. I just have to say of this very last sentences here. Do you know any nation that rules godly, that rules according to the Bible?
No.
It says, those churches which have served Antichrist shall be cast in the judgment. I don't know any church in this world, any big organized whatever denomination, whatever you're going to call it, that does not serve Antichrist.
That's right.
Those that have remained faithful to Christ shall be approved, their innocence proclaimed, their fidelity rewarded, and they shall flourish and reign upon the earth. That is only a few people, according to my understanding. Thus shall the mystery of providence be finished by a glorious display of the perfect equity and righteousness of the great judge. You know, especially when he speaks about nations, what nations is he talking about? What nation is going to stand righteous before the throne of God? And
spiritual Israel, right? Spiritual Israel.
Yeah.
That's
but
it.
No earthly nation that we know of, right?
No earthly nation. That's correct, Jörg.
Yeah, that's something that we have to understand from this reading, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I'm glad I made it with my nose. I'm sorry for the inconvenience of listening to my voice, but you know.
You sound much better now. You're warmed up now. Yeah.
God heals everything, right?
He does, yeah. His spirit can heal all things. That's right.
Okay, you have some closing remarks for today, Bret, before we meet again next Sabbath? For the next week, probably?
Yeah. I just want to thank you for hanging in there, Jörg, and reading the whole chapter. That was really good. And looking forward to the next time. Maybe we can meet earlier this week. I'm not sure what's going to happen on the schedule here, but I will contact you. And if I get some free time, love to do it.
Okay. Yeah. To me, it also rests that I have to pray, of course, for that my health will get a little bit better. Otherwise, I cannot do many readings anyway.
Right.
And but with the help of God, it will all work, because everything can be achieved by Him. Nothing can be achieved by myself. So I just have to trust Him that He will lead me out of this desolation. Now I'm getting a headache also. I don't know. That's normal. Today, this evening, I have to do Romanism and the Reformation in German. Let's see if I can do that reading again. Anyway, let's not speak about me. Let's speak about this book. James Edgar Wylie made a very good point in this 5th chapter, where he spoke about, and I just have to get the title back because, it is...
oh, yeah. The world's day and the church's night, I think it was.
Yeah,
Figuration.
Figuration of the world's day and the church's night. He made a very profound point through all the prophets, through Daniel, through John, through Hosea, through the Psalms, everything that we read there. There are so many places in the Bible that speak about this stuff, and all we have to do is read it, We have to understand it, and that's the point where it all comes back to, again and again and again, at the end of all my broadcasts.
I'm just so thankful that we figured out what year this was written, and it was more early on in James Aiken Wylie's writings, and I think that's great. We got that under our belt now.
Yeah.
And got that cleared up, so...
And we just have to understand, Bret, that we first and for all have to turn to the Bible for understanding. Right. James Edgar Wylie can write as long as he wants. As long as we don't understand the Bible in the first place, these books will not help us.
That's true.
These books will only help us when we study the Bible, when we do like the Bereans did, study the Bible every day and see if the things were so. And
that's right. We got to stand on our own 2 feet.
Eat the meat and spit out the bones.
Yep.
Especially in the teaching of the Bible, that we are using our discernment that is given or imputed to us by the Holy Spirit, who leads us into all truth, also in the truth of the reading.
Yeah.
So with this, I want to end the broadcast by reminding everybody to please, first of all, read your Bible. And then come to readings like this and get a better understanding of the Bible when you see the resemblance of the things that are written in the Bible prophetically, when you see that in fulfillment literally here in this earth. That's what these books are about. That's what these books help us with a better understanding. But therefore, first read your Bible. Until next time, Maranatha. Now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them that ye may live, and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers giveth you. Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord thy God hath destroyed them from among you. But ye that did cleave unto the Lord your God are alive, every one of you, this day. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord your God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart and all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. Especially the day that thou stoodest before the Lord thy God in Horeb, when the Lord said unto me, Gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And he came near and stood under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire unto the midst of heaven with darkness, clouds, and thick darkness. And the Lord spake unto you out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only ye heard a voice. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgment, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves. For ye saw no manner of similitude on that day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Lest ye corrupt yourselves, and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. But the Lord hath taken you and brought you forth from the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me for your sakes, and sware that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go into that good land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but ye shall go over, and possess that good land. Take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make you a graven image, or the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. When thou shalt beget children, and children's children, and ye shall remain and ye shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image, or the likeness, or anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God, to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto you go over Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. The Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. And there shall ye serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy God, thou shalt find him, if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul. When thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God, and shalt be obedient unto his voice, for the Lord thy God is a merciful God, he will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he swore unto them. Ask now of the days that are past, which were before thee since the day that God created man upon the earth, and ask from the one side of heaven unto the other, whether there hath been any such thing as this great thing is, or hath been heard like it? Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as thou hast heard, and live? Or hath God essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation by temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand, by a stretched out arm, and by great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? Unto thee it was showed, that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God. There is none else beside him. Out of heaven he made thee to hear his voice, that he might instruct thee. And upon earth he showed thee his great fire, and thou heardst his word out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved thy fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought thee out in his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before thee, greater and mightier than thou art, to bring thee in, to give thee their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider it in thy heart, that the Lord, he is God in heaven above and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes and his commandments which I command thee this day, that I may go well with thee and with thy children after thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days upon the earth which the Lord thy God giveth thee forever. Then Moses severed 3 cities on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, that the slayer might flee thither, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live, namely Bezer, in the wilderness in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. And this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Moses spake unto the children of Israel after they came forth out of Egypt. On this side Jordan, in the valley over against Beth-peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they were come forth out of Egypt. And they possessed his land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising. From Aroah, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, which is Hermon. And all the plain on this side Jordan eastward, even unto the sea of the plain under the springs of Pisgah.